Hello and welcome to Good Evening Britain, a Force for Good's evening show coming to you live from our studios here in the heart of the great British city of Glasgow. With me, your host, Alistair McConnachie, broadcasting throughout the United Kingdom and around the world on all our digital platforms, including TikTok, YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. Thank you very much for watching. We'll be here for the next hour and we will be talking about the news this week in our United Kingdom, and we do want to hear all your comments. We want to hear your questions. We want to hear your opinion, because we are going to be giving you our analysis of the situation. So please stay tuned, folks, and please share this broadcast wherever you can. If you can retweet it, please retweet it. If you can share it on YouTube, please do so. If you can share it on Facebook, please do so, because we totally rely and are so grateful to all our wonderful AFFG family who make sure that our message gets out in this program. Thank you so much to you all. Especially we want to thank Debbie straight in this evening. Good evening. And the great Frankie Scotland. Good evening. And thank you for your comment today on Facebook, which was really appreciated, and we hope that you enjoyed this program as much as you enjoyed last program. Frankie, thank you. The great Tommy as well, in as always, and Stephen, thank you. And to all those watching with me, my Union family, aren't we that? We are a family. We are a nation of families, as we always like to say here at A Force for Good. And Catherine as well. Hope you are doing well, Catherine. And also to Tracy. Good evening, Tracy. Nice to see you. And also to John. And to Nelson. Hope things are good where you are. Good stuff. Now, what are we going to speak about in this programme? Well, the first thing we're going to start with is the Keir Starmer situation. What's going on about that, you know? Because it was a couple of days ago we got into what we might call a little stushy in just behind Whitehall. At the embankment there, when he was coming out of a building, walking along, and he was, shall we say, he was spoken at loudly by a group of people who were in that particular area who didn't particularly like him for various reasons. And I emphasise the word various because this was a very eclectic group of protesters, some of whom were angry with him because he's not a true, in their eyes, Labourite. Others were angry at him for continuing to enforce lockdown. Others were angry at him for his particular opinion on the you-know-what thing that goes into your arm. So there was various disparate groups there who just had all come together in a united dislike of Mr. Starmer in particular, and he found himself quite literally in the wrong place at the wrong time. The right man in the wrong place at the wrong time. And of course that went viral. So what do we think? What do we think about the Keir Starmer situation? Because other people have pointed out that, you know, when Jacob Rees-Mogg, I think it was last year, he got accosted by a group of people and he got shouted at, and like nobody really cared too much about that. The media certainly didn't go overboard. They only seem to go overboard when it's one of theirs that's being shouted at. And so does anybody have any opinions on that? That's a question to you. What do you think about the Keir Starmer situation? Good evening to you. Good evening to you, Mark, as well. And to Harry. Tracy says, he came out the front of Scotland Yard knowing the people were there. Well, that's been pointed out, isn't it? Which normally would be very strange, because he certainly had a police escort with him. So the police would have said to him, you might want to go out the other entrance, because there's plenty of exits from that particular building. And I'm very grateful to George Galloway, who pointed out, I think it was in a tweet, was it yesterday or a couple of days ago, he said there's actually a tunnel from that particular building to the Houses of Parliament, which he says, this is George Galloway speaking, he says he has walked several times. That's amazing, isn't it? A tunnel. A tunnel. So he could have gone on that secret tunnel, you know, if he had wanted to, but he didn't. And don't get me into the whole tunnels under Whitehall thing, because there's lots of different theories about the extent to which they exist, but apparently they do exist. And George Galloway says that he's actually walked the tunnel from that particular building to the Houses of Parliament. He says he's walked it several times. So why in that case would Starmer come out of the building knowing that there was a group of people down there who were not his supporters and who were likely to give him a hard time? Would it simply just be in order to create a scene, in order to make a talking point, in order to get the sympathy vote? Because he certainly lost the sympathy vote when Boris Johnson made that wee dig at him about the fact that when Keir Starmer was the Director of Public Prosecutions, his organisation fell short in prosecuting a certain man. And that would sting. Oh, that would sting. That. And you could see it. You could feel it. You could feel it when you watched that. It's like, oh, that hurt, you know. And so Starmer would be annoyed. So Starmer has to turn this around, and he's got to think, how can I now get the public feeling sorry for me? Because I'm the victim here. And that would be a perfect way of doing it. You know, that would be a really good way of doing it. So I'm not saying that he did that, because I don't know if he did that or not. But I can understand the thinking that might suggest that he is now a victim, as Stephen points out there, that he's now a victim. So he changed the narrative to make sure people are talking about him in a very sympathetic light. And also to get Boris, as Samuel says there, to get Boris blamed for this. Because you notice they're blaming Boris on everything now. A picture emerged today of apparently an empty bottle an open corked bottle of champagne in an office in Downing Street during the time of the lockdown. And apparently it was part of a Zoom quiz night, but that's enough, again, to have a go at Boris. And actually, one of the people that's on here right now found a cutting online from last year, which showed that the party in Downing Street was actually reported by the Times, but just reported casually the very next day that it happened. It wasn't reported as a significant or controversial event. It was just simply reported. So that's... But now they're making it a big issue. Now, why are they making it a big issue? That's the thing. Why are they trying to get rid of Boris? Any clues on that as well? Why would they want to get rid of him? And don't get us wrong, we're not like some great Boris booster or anything like that. But there is definitely an aim to get rid of Boris. So why is that? Why is that when hitherto they've not actually cared? Now, there are at least two theories out there. One of them is that Boris wants to leave the EU, and the media have never forgiven him for that. And it is a witch hunt, as Samuel says. The media have never forgiven him for choosing at the last minute to be a Brexiteer. The other thing is that some people are saying that Boris is wanting to lift all the restrictions, and indeed he said today that on the 21st of February that England and Wales are going to lift all the remaining restrictions regarding this particular ongoing medical situation. And so the media do want to keep all of that locked down still. So they will not like him for that. So do they want to get rid of him in order to put some new guy up who's going to be for more restrictions, for more state power? on the individual? I don't know. It's just, we have to wonder why the media have got this bee in their bonnet about getting rid of Boris, a bee in the bonnet about Boris. Why has the media got a bee in its bonnet about Boris? That's the question. That's my question to you. I don't have the answer to that, but they clearly do have that bee in their bonnet about Boris. Somebody on TikTok there saying that the England doesn't give a toss about Scottish Unionists. Thank you for that point, because we are going to examine that point later in the programme, because it's something I've been concerning myself with in the last day or two as well. So I'm going to try to address that. Keep watching, Mark. Aces. Just keep watching that. Stephen says, burn your mask day, 24th of March. Well, do you know what? Neil Oliver had a great article in the Sunday Times on Saturday, and I'm just going to bring it up there, because I don't think I've actually lined it up, but I'm just going to see if I can line it up right now. And Neil Oliver is right on basically everything. We know that. He's a fantastic fellow. There he goes. Time to expose the cover-up. Masks are no good for society. And you won't necessarily be able to read that, but I can read it, and I'll just read one or two points that he makes. And he's talking about the nudge. He's talking about the nudge units, okay? And the nudge units are the psychological and, unfortunately, military units that figure out how they can basically brainwash the people into various forms of activity. So he is saying that I have wondered if the operatives in the nudge units have not inadvertently or knowingly tapped into something deep in the psyche of the modern iteration of our species. And he writes that, is there an urge felt by many to hide from the world as much as possible that is being met by this socially acceptable covering of faces? That's such a good point. Is there an urge? Is there an urge to hide from the world? Because that's true. There's many people, and when we were all growing up, we can all remember it, when we're like going into the big wide world. It was a scary world to go into, and a lot of people still find it a scary world. As we get older, the idea is that we become more of the world and we become more able to integrate reality into ourselves. But when you're young and you're growing up, the world can be a scary place. And even your classroom, especially your classroom, can be a scary place. And sometimes you just want to hide away from it all. And masks perform that for some people, And so Neil Oliver is right there when he says that. There is a desire among some people to hide away from the world. And you see it. I mean, what else can explain it, really, at the end of the day? And I was having this conversation earlier today with people. I was like, there's enough information out there now after 2 years that if you're interested, if you really want to, you can figure out what's going on. And you can choose one side or the other. And you can understand it. It's like the time for debate's over. So if you're still going along with the system, there's reasons why you're going along with the system. And here in Scotland, too many people go along with whatever Nicola Sturgeon says, and we've always said that she's seen as this mother of the nation for some people, and so she can tell them literally anything and they'll do it, And it's a uniform of loyalty to the state for that certain portion of people, and there's of course another portion of people who genuinely are afraid, and that's a pity. That's a pity, and that's what Neil Oliver's talking about there when he talks about it. What else did he say in there? A lot of good points, And thankfully, he does have a platform to say it. But what he also says, and which is undoubtedly true, he says, the rate of change that we are facing outstrips our ability to adapt. And he's quoting an academic here, and he says, we're generating new problems at a new and accelerating rate, and it is making us sick. Well, amen to that. Amen to that. Because so much of our modern day problems are only because we know about them. I'm reading at the moment. I'm reading a book, well, just it's here actually, about King James VI of Great Britain, because we're going to be producing a special edition in the summer, God willing, about the Union and how it came about, a special edition of our magazine Union Heart. And I needed to know more about that whole period in the 1500s and 1600s. And oh my goodness me, what an absolute violent world it was. Absolute violent world. And what's interesting as well is that most people were just going about their lives. But if you were in the leadership class, which they called the nobility, then you were at each other's throats, quite literally, on issues relating mainly to religion, and also differences within your own side of your chosen religion, because religion was politics back then. And people criticised James VI for coming up with the idea of the divine right of kings. And while that chap who wrote that book doesn't say it, I figured out that the reason he came up with that was because he was just trying to think up an excuse to stay alive in a religious age. How did I get on to James VI? Anyway, we'll probably come back to him later. Right now, Alan's got an interesting idea. He says that they're having a go at Boris because they want to replace him with a Muslim Prime Minister. That's an interesting thought. Although Sajid Javid is not likely, doesn't seem like a likely prospect, thankfully, goodness me. And of course, as Stephen says, almost all masks being used are just one sheet of cloth. They are not to any medical standard and are a waste of time. That's absolutely so. And Alan says, it's about time we started to live again. And Samuel thinks it's simply because the media are backing Labour. Yeah, but that's certainly a point. It could well be that's it's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. Well, just looking here if there's any comments. Say hello to Callum on TikTok. Nick Jameson says, can you put man on the mirror? Did you know that? Okay. Yes. Okay, well, thank you for all the thoughts coming in on TikTok. Anyway, many of them half formed, but some of them actually very good. Now, what else do we want to talk about here? Yes, Michael Gove said that he wanted to move the House of Lords to Glasgow. That's what I heard anyway. I heard that this week, so I looked into that, and he didn't actually say that, and he didn't actually want that. What he thought might be a good idea would be to move some sessions of the House of Lords around the country. He also mentioned York, for the specific reason that the chamber around the House of Lords is going to be getting refurbished anyway. So that was his point, and generally speaking, we would actually agree with that point, because in our magazine here, Do More Together, our issue 4 of Union Heart, we actually wrote a whole article about the importance of being seen to govern. And one of the things about the British state particularly is that so much of it is actually based down in London. And of course there's perfectly good economic and social reasons for that fact. However, as Unionists, we also want to see it being spread about all of the British Isles. We want to see evidence of the British state governing as it should all of the United Kingdom throughout the British Isles. And so moving some of the debates and things like that around the country is actually quite a valid idea. And we wrote about it here when we said locate Parliament around the United Kingdom. And we were thinking particularly, of course, about House of Commons debates at particular times of the year when it's particularly practical for them to do so. But House of Lords debates as well is another option. And of course the SNP went ridiculously mad, like, well, we don't like the House of Lords anyway, and because they think it's undemocratic and so on. So of course they're never going to agree to anything like that. They're never going to agree to anything that might in some way help the rest of the United Kingdom to understand the nature of our political system. They're never going to agree to that because they know when people start learning about it, they start to see the advantages of it and the benefits of it and things like that. And so they're never going to agree to that. So you can just kind of dismiss their point of view out of hand. But I certainly do go along with his idea that it could be a possibility. However, as we know with these guys, right, they always say stuff that you know is never going to happen. They say it just basically for clickbait, for a headline in a newspaper. And it's getting back to what the bloke on TikTok was saying. To what extent is the British Parliament really caring about Scotland and about Scottish unionism? And in some cases it's not actually caring, but we care about it and we want to make them care about it. And so that's what we are about. And just because somebody else doesn't care about you doesn't mean that you shouldn't care about them, okay? Which is where we are, because we care about Britain, the nation. Britain, the nation, that's what we care about. And we want to build that up and esteem it. And we are very much in the business of nation building. You know, this is something that's really just come to my consciousness over the last 2 or 3 years. This isn't about trying to stop, well, it is about trying to stop the SNP breaking up Britain, but it's also about building up Britain. It's also about building up the nation, helping people to understand how Britain, the nation, came about, and helping them to understand the value of what we have. And goodness me, there's no better man who tried to promote that in his day and age against quite literal slings and arrows other than James VI, who is well established as Britain's most intellectual king. He is the king who has written the most about politics, and he especially the politics of what he believed himself to be, which was the king of all of Great Britain and Ireland together. And he tried to make that case over and over. It has to be said to a very sceptical parliament in England, who did not necessarily warm to this apparent upstart Scotsman. Anyway, we revere his blessed memory, and he is the man as far as we're concerned, and we are on a mission to really promote his work. And to that end, this arrived in the office yesterday, the Stuarts and the Stuarts in Exile, which I look forward to watching and hopefully learning some stuff as well about that, because I know this woman came to my attention just last week because she's written a new book about that period called Devil Land. Rather than Angle Land, she's turned it around, she's called it Devil Land, in the 16th and 17th centuries. And oh my goodness me, what a cauldron all of Britain was during those years. And what's really interesting as well is what they did, and this has given me one or two kind of strange thoughts. It's like, back then the kings and queens throughout Europe, if they're having an argument with another country, what they would do is they would try to marry off one of their children to somebody from another country so that they would thereby cement the bonds of those countries together. Now, what that also did, though, is it caused problems because it meant that your country was now involved in the actual fortunes of this other country. And sometimes you had to go to war for that other country. But the idea was you cemented political bonds through marriage. Now, that's all kind of fallen away now, because that would be like, Boris Johnson somehow getting rid of his present wife and marrying Nicola Sturgeon in order to cement the bonds of the British Union. And good luck with that, basically. But then again, I don't know if Boris Johnson would really be the right man to marry Nicola Sturgeon. Maybe Jacob Rees-Mogg could be persuaded, although he would have to seek some sort of biblical justification for taking a second wife, which I'm sure he could find if he looked hard enough. And maybe that's what it's going to come back to. Maybe that's going to be our final. Maybe that's going to be the final solution as far as that sort of thing is concerned. But let's hope not. Let's hope we can do it, and we can maintain the union through our proper democratic procedures as we've come to know them post 18th century. And as always, we'll have a quiz tonight. There's no question there will always be a quiz, and we're going to have that right now on this day in British history. On this day in British history, coming right up, because British history matters. And quite a lot of stuff happened on this day in British history. The first thing that happened, the most important as far as today is concerned, as far as we as British Unionists are concerned as well, is that Princess Margaret passed away this day, 9th of February in 2002, aged 71, and she was cremated, and there's a nice picture of Princess Margaret there in her prime. Keep that up there actually for a moment. It's a really nice picture of her, and she was some looker actually. There's no question about that. And she was cremated, and the first royal to be cremated for many a long year. And that was because there was apparently no room in the vault for her to be buried next to her father, which I find a bit unusual. You could squeeze something in there, right, in the royal vault at Windsor, but apparently there was no room in there for her to get squeezed in either. So I don't know what that was about, but that was what she was told. So she decided to go the other way. And but what's interesting about her is she was born in Scotland. She was born at Glamis Castle, and she is the only royal in the recent past to be born in Scotland. And it would be good. It would be good to change to get that changed if we possibly could. What else happened on this day in British history? Let me just bring that up. 9th of February 1942, right? Soap rationing began. Soap rationing in 1942. So that's in the middle of World War II. And so that's a good excuse to display this advertisement from 1916 for Wright's soap, which says Britain's might is right. Wright's coal tar soap. And I like that. That's from 1916, when indeed Britain's might was right. But by the time 1942 came along, Britain was apparently so impoverished that we couldn't even create our own soap. You have to think about that, don't you? I mean, here we are. We're an empire. We've got an empire, but we can't make our own soap. I mean, things were going wrong by that time in Britain. Things were going seriously messed up in Britain by the 1940s. I mean, how we ever won the war, goodness only knows. But like, we had to ration soap. That is like so awful. And of course, people at the time wouldn't see it from our perspective today. They'd be like, "Well, soap, so expensive. We've got to not use soap." But if a nation is anything, it has to be able to produce its own blooming soap, for crying out loud. Anyway, we had to ration soap, along with, you'll remember, lots of other things as well, which the government had contrived to ensure that Britain couldn't even produce. Anyway, and here's the thing, right? Rationing lasted until the mid-50s, okay? So even after World War II, 9 years after World War II was eventually when we gave up rationing. But in 1950, there was a general election. And here's the thing. It says on Wikipedia, I couldn't believe this one. Well, I could quite believe it. It goes, the 1950 general election was fought largely on the issue of rationing. The Conservative Party campaigned on a manifesto of ending rationing as quickly as possible. But get this, the Labour Party argued for the continuation of rationing indefinitely. Labour was returned. People voted for that. People voted for the return. People voted for the continuation of rationing indefinitely. Okay, in 1950, Labour was returned, but with a majority badly slashed to 5 seats. And then there was another general election in 51. But for crying out loud, soap rationing did not end until September 1950, okay? Now, I mean, imagine that. It's like Labour's goes to the electorate. They go to the electorate and they go, well, what are our plans? Well, our plans are to continue rationing soap indefinitely. We want to continue rationing sweets indefinitely. We want to continue rationing sugar indefinitely. We want to continue rationing petrol indefinitely. And we want to continue rationing meat indefinitely. And like the public go, oh, okay then, I'll vote for that. Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, brilliant, mate. Excellent. All right, see you at the polls. Yeah, ration meat indefinitely. That's fantastic. Okay, so unless I'm missing something, that's what the British public voted for in 1950. I mean, there must have been something else that Labour had going for it, other than basically depriving the population of needed supplies indefinitely. There must have been something else that they had at that time that people went for. If you know what it was, please tell me. Anyway, so soap continued to be rationed until September 1950. Now, was everybody walking about smelling? Okay, was there like, how did that work? Okay, I don't know how that worked. Where you basically have contrived to run a country that can't wash itself properly. The British government, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm a big unionist, but British government has fallen down all the time. I mean, you've got to expect basically nothing from it, and if it gives you something, that's a good thing. But it'll give you more than any blooming Scottish Parliament will, that's for sure. And that goes without saying. And what else today? Yes, soap rationing ended in September 1950. Okay, remember that date, because that's important, September 1950. Now, what else happened this day? Edward Carson was born. This will please all our fans on TikTok. Edward Carson was born. And he was a man who was he would become a man who would be hugely influential in shaping the United Kingdom that we know today. And he's been called, quote, soldier, statesman and builder of modern Ulster. Edward Carson, born in Dublin. And he always considered himself very much to be an Irishman and a Briton. And he was of Scottish origin, his grandparents having come over from Dumfries. And he's central to the events which created the modern Northern Ireland as part of the United Kingdom, although he always would have preferred, and his very first option was maintaining all of Ireland as one within the Crown. That was always his preferred position. And he had a remarkable political career. He was leader of the Ulster Unionist Party, the Irish Unionist Parliamentary Party, Minister of the War Cabinet, First Lord of the Admiralty, Solicitor General for Ireland, Solicitor General for England and Wales, Attorney General for England and Wales, and Leader of the Opposition. And he died in 1935. And we've got a pic of him here pic of his statue, which is outside Stormont, and we'll put that up there because it's got some good words which I want to read. Now, that statue was put up in 1932, and these words of his are important because they're concentrating on the support, that we should concentrate on the support of the people rather than politicians. Okay, we should see faith, we should have faith in the people of Britain, not the politicians per se of Britain. And that seems fitting to our present circumstances, and it addresses the point that was made by the person on TikTok saying that the British parliamentarians don't care about the Scottish Unionists, something that we don't entirely agree with you on, but it's been a long-running issue. And he says here, and he's speaking to the people of Northern Ireland, he says, stick to your old ideals of closer and closer connection with this country, by which he was referring to Great Britain. The coalition government is not the British nation, and the British nation will certainly see you righted. Your interests lie with Great Britain. You have helped her, and you have helped her empire, and her empire belongs just as much to you as it does to England. Stick to it and trust the British people. And he said that in a speech in the House of Lords on the 14th of December 1921. And so that's Edward Carson, born on this day, telling us to put our faith in the people, not in our politicians. And that's what we try to do here at A Force for Good. Raymond says, great to hear your focus on Ireland and Edward Carson. No surrender. No home rule. That was his phrase, wasn't it? Fascinating and fascinating individual, no question about it. And clearly somebody who felt very much Irish as well, like in the sense of what we would identify today, people of the Republic. He felt very much a patriot for all of Ireland. And no doubt he would be distraught at the fact that events moved in such a way and his opponents moved in such a way as to prohibit that maintenance. And anyway, that's just what happened. That's what happened. And so I'm gonna ask you a question on that for this amazing tin of sweeties competition time. Look at that tin of sweeties. There's a Lancaster bomber heading off over the wide cliffs of Dover. There'll be Lancaster bombers over the wide cliffs of Dover. In your post tomorrow, if you answer this question properly. To commemorate the 100th anniversary of the Royal British Legion and this particular sweetie company, which happened to fall in the same year. And that says Royal British Legion, and there's a little poppy in there to represent the bee. Simpkins 100th anniversary. So that can grace your mantelpiece if you send your answer in to that address. This address here, contact@aforceforgood.uk. The question, and you have to send it to that. And listen, folks, easily done. Fire up your email address, your email machine, put that address in, and just get the answer and send it to us. And you could be in with a chance. I mean, I can tell you will be in with a chance of doing it. So please do it to contact@aforceforgood.uk. Sorry, folks. The first person to answer the question is in which year did soap rationing end in the United Kingdom? In which year did soap rationing end in the United Kingdom? If you can send your answer to contact@aforceforgood.uk, you will be in with a very good chance of getting this free of charge in the post to you tomorrow. So please, folks, it wasn't 2016, although no doubt it feels like it for some people. Cool. Super Typist says, good evening, he just got home. Good to see you, Super Typist. Going back to the soap thing, Mark says the local gangs would have found a way of getting soap on the black market. That's true. The man in Dad's army would have sold you a batch, no doubt. Ian says even baths were a hassle back then. Well, that's probably true, wasn't it? Because you had to boil the water and stuff like that. Well, I don't know if you'd boil water, but you'd have to heat the water, wouldn't you, over the coal fire and so on. So yeah, I mean, different world back then, wasn't it? Raymond says, no problem being British and Irish. Nelson says, that's a beautiful little tin. And hello to Arnie. Good to see you, Arnie. We'll give you the answer to that just before the top of the hour. Just before the top of the hour, we'll give you the answer. And if you have not, can't stress this enough, if you've not entered before, please do tell us. And that's right, you had to share the water, didn't you? Sunday night in the front room in a tin bath, everybody shared the water. Gosh, absolutely. Those were the days, The Book of Time says that I remember outside clothes washing. Well, wow, that is going back, isn't it? Scottish Red Rep says, Scottish and British and proud of it. Fantastic, well done. Well done. The Book of Time said that I did it. Yeah, good. Oh, it's good. Good evening tonight. Good evening tonight. What else have we got? We've got Busting Indie Myths Part 5 coming up very shortly. Anything else that I need to speak about? Yeah, several things. So let's now bring up Busting Indie Myths Part 5, okay? Busting Indie Myths Part 5. This is something we do every week. Busting Indie Myths Part 5. Now, some Scottish nationalists will say that the matter of Scottish independence is for Scotland alone. And so the decision to have another referendum is also for people in Scotland alone. Well, that very much depends upon the way in which you frame the matter. For example, if you frame the question of all about Scotland becoming independent, then you might say that yes, it's only for people in Scotland to care about that. However, if you frame the question, as we do, as being all about Britain staying together, then that is clearly a matter for all of the people of the United Kingdom. Now, how are all of those people to be involved in the matter? Well, firstly, through their representation in the Union Parliament of the United Kingdom, and for their representatives, their MPs, having the ultimate say on whether or not there should be a referendum, and secondly, through their own behaviour, such as helping those who are trying to keep the UK together wherever they may be based, helping them physically or financially or morally, or making the case for a united Britain in the press and to their friends in the pub. So we do not see this debate as just about Scotland becoming independent. From our point of view, this is about the United Kingdom staying together and building together, building something greater, even greater than what we have. It's about defending the integrity of the United Kingdom. It's about not breaking up Britain. It's about keeping Britain together. So to conclude, the matter of Scottish separation is not for Scotland alone, because this is not about Scotland alone. This is about all of Britain together. So if you're British, you're involved. And we'll be back with Busting Indy Myths Part 6 next week. We always say if you're British, you're involved, and we wrote an article about that, which you'll find up there in the thread, and that's out on Twitter and on Facebook as well. If you're British, you're involved, okay? It's not a matter for Scotland alone. And this is made very clear, of course, in our little wee book for the Union, which is an amazing little work which has sold hundreds and hundreds of copies, and it really needs to be a bestseller sold throughout the United Kingdom. Now, we've sent copies of this to the Scottish Parliament, to their bookshop there, and we've said to the Scottish Parliament bookshop that they can take as many copies of these as they want for a very, 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 very reasonable sum. We're almost basically giving them away to the Scottish Parliament if they can sell them in their bookshop. We've approached them twice, and neither times have they got back to us. Well, that just shows you, doesn't it? They have no interest in running our material. And I can tell you for a fact, I could walk into the Scottish Parliament bookshop tomorrow and there wouldn't be a single book there advocating for the Union. Now, we're basically giving these to the Scottish Parliament bookshop free, and they don't want them. Now, that tells you how good they are. Okay, so you can get this for a £5, only a £5, including post and packaging, and we've got the link up there. And you might also want to get your copy of 40-page magazine, Do More Together. You might also want to get that at the same time, in which case, if you do, we have a special discount for you, and we'll put up the well, you can negotiate the discounted link from the WeBook link or from the Do More Together magazine link. But these are what keep us going, folks. So if you can help us, please do get them. And these are unionist educations. We call them an education in authentic unionism, because goodness knows our people need to be educated about this. And Nelson points out here, every time Scottish independence is pushed by the SNP, the whole of the United Kingdom's economy is affected. 100%, Nelson. The SNP are openly working to bring the whole of our wonderful United Kingdom to its knees. That's right. And people perhaps don't really understand that, about the extent to which everybody's economy would be compromised if there were to be a breakup. Everybody's economy would, especially the rich people who are out there, you know. They have got, the rich people, and I'm talking about, you know, your multimillionaires, they have got so much to lose if the United Kingdom was to break up, because their wealth is built upon the United Kingdom. So they need, you know, don't they even think about it? And it's a little hint to any multimillionaires who are out there. And if you want to support the most effective pro-UK group that's here at the moment, okay, you know how to contact us. contact@aforceforgood.uk. Whew. Arnie says, why does the SNP hate the union so much? Well, who knows the exact answer to that? But there's a lot of chip on shoulder attitudes going on there, a lot of things that haven't been properly thought through, a lot of mistaken ideas, which we won't get into tonight. But it's a good question. We should just ask them, why do you hate the United Kingdom so much? Did you see they are giving all UK school children a book commemorating the Platinum Jubilee? I wonder how many NAT teachers won't hand them out. I hadn't seen that, Alan. I'm pleased to hear that they're doing such a thing. I did not know about that. That's amazing if they're doing that. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Paul says, quite rightly, the Scottish people affirmed the British identity of us all through their vote in 2014. Thank you. And I'm glad that you brought that point up, Paul, because what often happens is that the Scottish nationalists will say, we never, the people of Scotland never supported the Union. by which they mean like in 1707 there wasn't a democratic vote about it. Well, from what I'm reading about 1707 and that particular period of time, basically if you got allowed to say anything, you were quite a lucky person, because basically everything was just in the hands of obviously the powers that be, which was not the common individual. And so that was what I'm saying is that was a pre-democratic age. But when the democratic age came about, Scottish people continued to vote to send representatives to Westminster, and they continued to vote to do that. And not only that, but they voted in 2014 for the referendum to stay in the United Kingdom. So we've had many chances to continue to show our support for the Union democratically over the years. And in fact, that will be a busting Indy myths, no doubt in the future we'll make that point particularly, but it's so true. We've had so many democratic opportunities, and 2014 was, if you like, the quintessential one to show our support for the United Kingdom, our wonderful United Kingdom, as Nelson pointed out there. Stephen says, we are all unionists, but the nationalists are split. They seem to be. You have EU nationalists, SNP nationalists, ALBA nationalists, and non-EU nationalists. They are like rats in a sack, fighting each other. Oh, Alan says about this, it's in today's national Twitter feed. Okay, I got the today's national. It's actually sitting over there, but I can't reach it. But it's in the National's Twitter feed. Okay, they are unhappy as culture is devolved, and they say it's the UK government stepping on their toes. Well, let's have more toe stepping. If that's an example of stepping on their toes, then I'm all for that. That's wonderful. Wonderful stuff. And of course, the monarchy is one of the few remaining things that really helps to identify the United Kingdom and to bring it together. And I understand some unionists will say, well, I'm not, they're not monarchists or whatever. But really, if you're for the UK, you have to be for the monarchy, because it's one of the quintessential, one of the main icons that symbolises the union. And if you took that away, then you would have to start asking what other elements of Britishness are there to actually represent the British state. So, Republican or monarchist, the monarchy is essential to the maintenance of the United Kingdom. Indeed, it's even essential to its very name, kingdom. Absolutely. Now, we have a winner, and if we just... That's fantastic. The person who is going to win this is Leah Plant. Congratulations. This will be winging its way to you. Great to see that you've won. Now, Leah, please can you use that same email and send us your address so that we can get this in the post to you tomorrow. Okay? Thanks very much for entering. And please do send us your address via that email that you used. Wonderful stuff. Wonderful stuff. Congratulations, says Debbie. As does Jeff. Jeff, a previous winner of our competition. Fantastic, Leah. Good to have you on side. Alan, also another previous winner. Arnie says, enjoy the sweeties. Nelson says, well done, Leah. Stephen says, woohoo, Leah, another new name. Absolutely. Well, congratulations, Leah. That's good. That's good. Fantastic. Okay, well, folks, it's come to that time of the show. We're going to bring it to an end. I want to thank everybody on TikTok for coming in. We're going to be here next week. We're here every week between 7 and 8. We have a competition. We have our On This Day in British History, and we chat and talk to people. We didn't have a guest this week. We're hoping to have a guest next week. If you can, please do share our work around. Now, there's just something I want to bring up because Debbie has sent it to me, and so I'm just going to bring it up here if I can. Let's just see. It was talking about the tunnels. Okay, the tunnels that are under. The tunnels that are apparently under Whitehall, which is a mysterious thing, isn't it? It's a mysterious thing, and who knows how they ever got put together or got done. And where are they now? You're just going to have to bear with me, folks. I'm sorry about this, but yes. And because this is actually interesting information, so here's what it says. George Galloway says, there's a tunnel between Portcullis House and Parliament, which I have walked thousands of times. Well, that might be an exaggeration, but let's imagine he's walked it tens of times. No members of the public can access it. The leader of the opposition has an official car with police protection. Why then did he choose to walk through the mob? A tunnel between Portcullis House and Parliament. And then Nazir Afzal comes in and says he was walking along Victoria Embankment, returning to Portcullis House from Ministry of Defence. He wasn't walking between Portcullis House and the House of Commons. Well, who knows where he was walking to or from. The point is, we now know there was a tunnel between Portcullis House and Parliament. Remarkable, remarkable. I wonder when these were built. There's also tours that you can go on of tunnels in London, which I'd love to go on. London tunnel tours, just Google that, no doubt, and you'll find the information about that. And many of them were there, as the Book of Time says. Some of them were there for as they were used as bomb shelters, but I don't think that they were constructed for that particular purpose. Okay, folks, we'll be back. I want us to say thank you to everybody who's come along. Thank you very much. Thank you, Frankie. Thank you, Super Typist. Nelson says Carl Pearson would make a great guest. You know what? I'm going to contact him. As soon as this program's finished, I'll contact him, ask him if he wants to be on next Wednesday. He would be a great guest. He would be a great guest, Nelson. And we've been trying to get him on for a while. He's a busy man, but let's see if we can do it for next Wednesday. Carl Pearson. Alan says, have a good evening. It just remains for me to say thank you, folks, for watching. God bless the United Kingdom. And, folks, God save the Queen. See you next week. See you, folks, on TikTok next week.